Listen, some of the narratives surrounding Steph Curry throughout his entire career have been really weird to me. He's been labeled a choker. Some people say that he doesn't come through in the big moments. Some people say that he can't handle the pressure, whatever. Let's put the narratives aside and take an objective look at what he's doing right now in the finals.
Right now, he's averaging 34.3 points per game,
6.3 rebounds per game, and he's shooting at an efficiency of 66.4% true shooting. That ranks top 15 in points per game during a single finals series by any player in NBA history. Also, he's doing that in fewer minutes per game than any player in the top 15. To say that what we're currently witnessing is greatness wouldn't even do it justice. People like to complain about the fact that so many of Steph's shots come from simply getting a good screen and how much he benefits from the Warriors system, but the idea that the shots that he's getting are just open shots really couldn't be further from the truth. As a matter of fact, his shot making this series has been the best of any player on the floor in terms of tightly contested shots. Right now, he's shooting over 60% from three on tightly contested shots. Like, wrap your head around that for a second. 60% from three on wide open shots would be amazing in its own right. But he's attempting almost 5 tightly contested threes per game, and he's making over half of those attempts. This is an all-time great level of difficult shot making. And really, that's what Steph Curry is. He's an all-time great, and I think that notion during this finals is being solidified before our eyes in this series, if it wasn't already for most people. But how does this finals series compare to the rest of his career? Let's take a look. This is, from a scoring perspective, objectively his best final series of his career. It's the most points per game on a mind-blowingly high efficiency, and it honestly blows every single final series of his career out of the water, just in terms of the scoring. Now let me give you some perspective too. This man is 34 years old. Players are expected to start to decline around this age, but Steph Curry continues to get better. His game isn't particularly reliant on sheer athleticism. It's primarily a game built around skill and an understanding of the game and how his game is able to manipulate defenses and create opportunities for his teammates and for himself. Now, let's be clear too. He's doing all of this against the best defense in the NBA. This isn't against a team that's all offense and no defense. They're playing a historically great defense. And to call what he's doing a carry job would be an understatement. He single-handedly kept them in games throughout this series, and during Game 4, he single-handedly willed them to a win in a game that couldn't be more of a must-win. When he's on the court, the Warriors have an offensive rating of 109 points per 100 possessions, which may not necessarily sound like a ton, but when he's off the court, that offensive rating plummets to an abysmal 83.9 points per 100 possessions. They go from being able to compete to being the legitimate worst offense of all time when he's off the court. Another really concerning factor is when you take a look at what the Warriors as a whole are shooting like on wide open shots. Like I mentioned earlier, Steph is shooting 61.1% on tightly contested threes, but Golden State as a whole is only shooting 33% on wide open threes. And it's not like the Warriors are attempting a low volume of wide open threes or anything like that. They're attempting almost 16 per game in the finals. For him to be doing quite literally everything for them in terms of scoring is completely unheard of. Now, one thing to take into consideration is the fact that the Celtics are utilizing a lot of drop coverage against Steph Curry. Now, let's look at an example of some of the defense that Boston is playing against Steph. Pay attention to what Rob Williams is doing.
Looney is going to initiate the screen,
and Rob Williams, instead of coming up to guard the shot, you can see that he's going to stay back towards the paint, and this is going to allow Steph all the space in the world to get into a nearly uncontested shot. Now, even though Derek White navigates the screen pretty well, it's not enough to stop Steph Curry from making the shot. Now, I don't know if this is what Boston is going for. I don't know if drop coverage is what they're trying to do, but it's certainly not working. Maybe the goal is to make Steph Curry beat you by himself, which I suppose isn't the worst strategy in the world considering how the rest of the Golden State Warriors have been playing, but at the same time, it's Steph Curry, and he showed us in Game 4 that he kind of is capable of beating you by himself. Now, Steph is averaging 1.22 points per possession when coming off of screens during the playoffs so far. It's one of the most effective shots that the Warriors have at their disposal, and Boston's inability to shut it down is resulting in Steph Curry being able to put up career numbers in this final series. The Celtics are really relying on Derek White and Marcus Smart to have nearly flawless screen navigation, which, don't get me wrong, they're really good at this part of defense, but that's such a variable thing, and relying on perfection on the defensive end is foolish. You just can't get away with blown coverages against Steph. He's too good at recognizing the most minuscule lapse in judgment in that split second where you sag off just a little bit too far or you put your hand up at just the wrong time. It's already gonna be too late.
Now, this isn't always traditional drop coverage because that would be complete and utter suicide, and it would leave Curry more open than you would ever want him to be. It's more of like a shallow drop to where the presence might be felt a little bit, but it's certainly not enough to slow down a shooter like Steph Curry. There's also the fact that the Warriors are setting screens for Curry that are unbelievably high in the half court, and that creates a multitude of problems for the Celtics defense. Let's look at an example here. Wiggins is going to set this screen really, really high, and then Gary Payton is going to come and set another screen for him, which allows Curry to get the switch onto Horford. Now, is this really drop coverage? Horford is out past the three-point line. Surely it's enough pressure to at least prevent the shot, right? Well, since it's Steph Curry, he's going to pull up well past the three-point line and drain the bucket. This is the problem in a nutshell. If Tatum goes under the screen, then that still leaves the greatest shooter of all time with an open pull-up. If Horford comes to trap, then that leaves Curry the opportunity to get it to Gary Payton in the short roll, and if Horford overcommits, then Curry can beat him to the rim. It's the same kind of situation here. It's not like Rob Williams isn't up relatively high, even if he is still technically in a shallow drop, but it's just way too much room to leave Steph Curry. It is quite literally a situation where you have to pick your poison if you're Boston. Considering Steph Curry is shooting 50% on pull-up threes in the finals on 10 attempts per game, I'd say there's not really a whole lot you can really even do to stop him. I mean, you could try trapping him, but Steph Curry is a great playmaker, and he's almost always going to make the right pass that sets up his teammates for an open opportunity, or make a pass that allows him to relocate and get open for another shot. Like here, he's going to drive into the paint, and he meets some interior resistance, so he's going to bail out to Gary Payton in the corner. Now, Gary Payton isn't a great three-point shooter, and he rarely even attempts them, so Boston doesn't even bother to send someone out there immediately. But Curry is going to do the smart thing and relocate to the corner right next to Payton, and it allows Payton to dump it off to him and screen Williams, which allows Curry to drain the open shot. Trying to guard him off of screens is hard enough as it is, and trying to make the correct defensive rotations when he's so good at relocating off the ball adds an entire other layer on top of the already seemingly impossible task of guarding Steph Curry. So what can Boston do to slow him down? Let's look back at this play as an example. Horford is sitting back. Instead of doing that, Boston needs to consider a pre-switch approach to Steph and aggressively cover him in the pick and roll. See, Horford waits for Curry to come to him, when instead, Horford needs to be going to Curry and getting on him tight immediately off of the screen to provide coverage. Now, this does force Tatum to have to recover and guard the roll unless they want to concede a double team, but this deters the possibility of a Steph Curry pull-up three, which we now understand is one of the most impactful shots that the Warriors have at their disposal. Another thing that Boston can consider doing is shading Steph on the screen. This requires a lot of communication and awareness, but on this play in particular, shading Curry to the right instead of letting him go left off of the screen into open space would force him right into Marcus Smart and allow Horford to stay with Gary Payton instead of being switched onto the mismatch of Steph Curry. These approaches have their own sets of weaknesses, and that's the problem with Steph Curry. He knows the weaknesses of every type of defense that you can throw at him, and he's going to take advantage of it if you don't do everything in your power to negate those weaknesses. And that's what makes Steph Curry such a deadly player. So who do you think is going to take Game 5? Let me know in the comments below. If you guys enjoyed this video, please consider hitting that subscribe button and leaving a like. That's the #1 way to support me and help me continue to make content. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.